I'm Vinny Politan. Thanks for joining us tonight. What a night. What a night, right? Oh, my goodness, what is going on tonight? You know, I've covered stories through the years involving allegations of jury tampering, and it's always been the defense. Like the most famous, John Gotti, right? They called him the Teflon Don. Why? Because they always got to the jury. They always got to the jury. So when you talk about someone trying to influence a juror in the middle of a case, I mean, from my perspective, it's always been the other side. Tonight, we're talking about not someone from the prosecutor's office, but as we discussed last hour with a bunch of angry defense attorneys, but rightfully so, if this stuff is true, if is the big word. You've got someone from the government who knows you're not supposed to talk to the jury about the case that they're hearing. The court clerk. And what we're talking about here is Becky Hill. So today, the attorneys for Alec Murdaugh got together on the steps of the courthouse down in the low country, South Carolina, and talked about some of their allegations against Becky Hill and why Alec Murdaugh did not get a fair trial and deserves a new one.
Alec Murdaugh maintained and still maintains his innocence in the murder of Maggie and Paul and believes the truth will ultimately prevail. Jim?
When jurors receive private communications outside the confines of a public courtroom, the Sixth Amendment is violated and numerous other constitutional rights are violated. And that's not Jim Griffin on the law, that is the law of the land. And I want to quote from a decision from the South Carolina Court of Appeals, which is behind me, and states this: where there is a private communication of a court official to members of the jury, an occurrence which cannot be tolerated if the sanctity of the jury system is to be maintained. A new trial must be granted unless it clearly appears that the subject matter of the communication was harmless and could not have affected the verdict. What we had filed today, supported by sworn testimony of jurors, is that the Clerk of Court had improper private communications with the jurors, and the subject matter of those communications was the credibility of the defense that the Murdaugh legal defense team put up, and it was the believability of the defendant's own testimony. Now, there's been a lot of talked about whether Alec should have taken the stand. I can assure you, when we considered what factors and what we should and should not do and considered whether he should take the stand, we never considered the likelihood, as reported to us by the jurors, that the Clerk of Court would go in to the sanctity of the jury room before he testified and tell the jurors, don't be fooled by his testimony, watch out for his body language. And that is what the sworn testimony that we have filed in court today says. And if that is true, which we have every reason to believe that it is, and no reason to believe that it's not, there's no choice but the courts to grant a new trial.
The Clerk of Court is the person that makes sure the jury gets their food. If they're put up for the night, someplace to stay, their travel accommodations are met. They're not someone that ever should talk to them about the case. I've never had it happen. Again, I've been doing this for a very long time. Never heard of it happening until this case.
And the clerk they're talking about, Becky Hill, has written a book, Behind the Doors of Justice, The Murdaugh Murders, available on Amazon. People are buying it, people are reading it, including the defense. This is part of the basis of them bringing this motion. It was based upon this book being released and what's in it. She wrote it with a man named Neil Gordon. Again, it's a big if. If these allegations are true, I think he's going to get a new trial. I really do. But it's a big if. And I've been saying that all night. So let's try to get some balance here tonight. Let's get the other side. Joining us tonight, said there was a co-author here. Co-author of Behind the Doors of Justice, The Murdaugh Murders, Neil Gordon is joining us tonight. Neil, great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Vinny.
Okay. Before we get into some real details here, your reaction to what happened today. I called it like an earthquake centered down there in the low country, shaking all of us who followed this case. What's your reaction to what you heard from the defense today?
I was shocked. I worked with Becky for 6 months as both a friend and a colleague on the book. And we've had many discussions in writing the book about any kinds of conversations that she would have had with anybody associated. As Harpootlian mentioned, I mean, she has many different tasks. She's got to work with the judge, the media, the public, dealing with the food, dealing with defense attorneys and so forth. And very little with the jury. I mean, there is a chief bailiff that keeps their eyes on the jury at all times, and there's very little contact.
So in preparing this book, were there any conversations that you had with Becky about conversations she had with jurors during the course of the trial, including the foreperson who the defense is saying there were private conversations, allegations that they're on the Moselle property and they walked off together? They may have had a conversation in the jury room bathroom.
Well, Vinny, all that I know and that we put in the book, you mentioned Moselle. There was an order from the judge for there to be silence. There was no conversation to be had. So I asked her and said no conversation was had. We talked about a couple of different things. If you meet Becky, you know that she's a very spiritual person, and she mentioned that the jury was very prayerful. It was mentioned to her that they prayed often. Becky prayed often with her staff and all. And I asked her directly, I said, did you ever pray with the jury? And she said, oh, no. No legal entity is allowed to have prayer with the jury. So, you know, it was very clear to me that there was a line there.
Okay, now, it's unusual. I've been doing here at Court TV for a long time. I don't know if I've ever seen a book written by the clerk of the court after one of these big trials. I've seen them written by the attorneys on both sides, and sometimes they got in a little trouble for that. I've seen plenty of them written by jurors in states that permit it after a certain amount of time. What was the motivation that Becky had to get together with you to write this book? And was this the master plan before the trial started? Was it plotted that this was going to be the big retirement nest egg?
Oh, I don't know about that. I didn't actually meet Becky until 3 weeks after the trial.
Till after?
My wife, 3 weeks after the trial, my wife, like millions of people, were just glued to Court TV, and they had trouble working. She decided to go with a colleague, Addie Strozier, to Walterboro to actually watch the trial. She had a chance meeting with Becky the day that the vans were leaving to go to Moselle. In fact, I remember what was said was that there was, Becky was actually making sure that people did not get pictures of the jury. That's how intent she was on that. And so Melissa mentioned to Becky, took a selfie and then reached her out, 3 weeks later, and said, hey, do you mind if I use this in a coffee table book? And Becky said, this has been the trial of the century, and I'm thinking about it. I just don't know how to go about it. And so they brought me in as a colleague. I mean, my background has been in journalism for 30 years. I instantly liked her. And as you held up the book, Behind the Doors of Justice, you're right. No clerk of court has ever really written a book to just explain just minute by minute how intense a trial situation is and how reverent you have to be to the truth and to law. And I got to tell you, you asked my reaction. I was pretty upset at what Harpootlian said was the motivation that Becky had. Last time I checked, Simon & Schuster did not send us a check for $200,000. The Gordons and the Hills put up $30,000 of our own money because we felt this was an interesting story to tell. So right away, Vinny, for that to be motivation for her to get a book deal is completely false right there.
So what you just explained to me is that you're in the negative on this.
We self-published.
You self-published.
We self-published.
So that means you
Yeah.
you didn't get the big advance, none of that.
No.
Okay.
We advanced a check for $30,000. You know, you got attorney fees, you got to get set up on Amazon, you got to print so many copies, liability insurance, editors, you name it. But we felt it was a story that should be told. I mean, in my lifetime, I'm 59 years old. I don't know that there will ever be another trial like this. And it was my honor and pleasure to work with somebody with such integrity and character as someone like Becky Hill. Did you interact with her? I know that you were there.
I was there. I did not. Some of our staff had the opportunity to do that. And you said another trial like this in our lifetime. Well, we're hoping there's not going to be another one like this, because that's what the defense wants, is an exact repeat of the trial. Obviously, they want a different ending to the whole thing. Have you spoken to Becky today after all of this has become public?
Very briefly, as you might imagine, she's had calls off the hook from media outlets. And as much as she'd like to make a statement, these allegations are so deep that she has hired counsel and they're going over them. But I am told they are going to put out a statement in the near future. And one thing I know about Becky Hill, she will answer each and every one of these allegations truthfully. She's one of the most genuine people I know, and it made me sick seeing this played out on national TV, and I just felt like I needed to speak out.
You know, and again, I've prefaced everything today saying, if this is true, because
thank you,
because that's a big part of it, right? And the fact, I mean, she's been doing this for years, right? So, I mean, she understands the rules and the role and everything else. So that's why I was so shocked by these allegations. Now, there were some strange things that happened during the course of this trial, including this whole Facebook controversy with juror, I think it was 758, who ended up getting kicked off. Was there any of that sort of drama? Because I have not read the book yet, I'll be honest with you, okay? 100% honest, I have not read this book yet. Now everyone has to read it, right?
Vicky,
to figure out what the defense
Vinny,
is talking about.
I'm going to send you an autographed copy.
Oh, thank you. But is there anything in here about the juror who got bounced from the trial because of whatever was going on with the Facebook posts, with the ex-husband, et cetera?
Yes, there is, and what it all led to, and this I think is really the most important part of it in our book, is it led to Judge Newman, very unusual, calling the jury back in chambers and interviewing her, calling the juror rather, and interviewing her about the situation. And what he said, and he addressed this to the public and to the gallery, he said he felt that she was discussing the merits of the case, whatever way you wanted to go with it, with the outside public. And so the judge did decide to disqualify her and send her home.
And does Becky, was she discussing it with Becky? Is that who she was speaking with?
Oh, no. Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. Apparently, and again, I'm not crystal clear on this, but
this is not sworn testimony tonight, Neil. You're not under oath, so just your best recollection.
Thank you.
Will work tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, Vinny, there were apparently some Facebook posts that were out there, allegedly by somebody who knew her and talked about her talking about the case in the community. That was enough for the judge to call the person in. And then after interviewing that juror, he decided that she should not be on the jury anymore. So the end result is the judge made the decision. And we didn't really cover much of, because Becky really didn't have any involvement in it that we discussed.
So as we sit here tonight and you think about doing this project with Becky, You guys funded it yourselves. Are there any regrets? Anything like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done this, or oh, we put stuff in here that could be problematic and could perhaps compromise the trial or compromise Becky?
Well, that's a fair question, Vinny. And obviously, when we sat down, we decided that we wanted to share as much as we could with, and I should tell you, this was run through a media attorney. This was run through the Ethics Commission in the state of South Carolina about even a clerk of court being allowed to write a book, an elected official. And they said as long as, sealed documents aren't shared and as long as confidential information is not shared, it's okay. And so we went on that premise before we even started. And we carefully vetted this through media attorneys and editors, and we feel very good about it because it's not so much about the trial. You were there, you saw, and you can see the gallery, small town courthouse. It's like Mayberry, town square. The media is all out in front. People have an opportunity to come in and see this, almost an opportunity of a lifetime. People came from New York and other parts of the country just to see this. And it was wonderful to be able to share how when people work together for the common good to do the right thing, this can come off as, I think, a well thought of trial and how it was run. And that was really her job, was to run the courtroom. That's she's like the operations manager of the courtroom. And from what I could tell, it seemed to me she did a very good job, and I'm proud to call her a friend, and I'm proud to co-author the book with her, and I'd write another one with her.
Well, I've got the title for the next one, Behind the Doors of Justice, and you follow how all of this sort of works its way through the whole system. Unbelievable. Neil Gordon, appreciate you coming on tonight. I always want both sides of every story, especially when one side is really loud with theirs. So I hope you'll come back as things develop.
I'd be honored to. And Vinny, thank you for being balanced on this and an opportunity to come on and share. And I hope you have a great rest of the program.
All right. Thanks so much. Neil Gordon joining us tonight. All right. Don't go anywhere. Up next. Will Alec Murdaugh get a second chance to stand trial, a second chance to testify, a second chance to convince a jury? Our think tank will let us know.
Bradley Caraway,
charged with murder and leaving the scene of an accident.
Trapped underneath 3,000 pounds of mangled Honda.
The Fled the Scene murder trial. Live coverage weekdays at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
These are the cases that captivated the world.
Couldn't keep my life straight.
They were killed by their own children.
Court TV Legendary Trials. Go to courttv.com/legendary trials to find out how to watch.
The defendant, Richard Alexander Murdaugh, wishes to take the stand.
I didn't shoot my wife or my son anytime.
All right, he says he didn't do it, says he wants a new trial. Now he may have a reason to get a new trial, depending on how this whole thing goes. Explosive allegations from his team today, saying that the clerk of the court, Becky Hill, who wrote this book, we just spoke to her co-author, was talking to the juror and influencing the jury during the course of the case. Take a look. This is an affidavit from juror 630. Toward the end of the trial, Rebecca Hill told the jury not to be fooled by the evidence presented by Mr. Murdaugh's attorneys, which I understood to mean that Mr. Murdaugh would lie when he testified. She also instructed us to, quote, watch him closely immediately before he testified, including to look at his actions and look at his movements, which I understood to mean that he was guilty. It's as if we had Janine Driver instructing the jury on body language. I mean, what is this? Now, she's denying it. her co-author also told us that none of this happened. It was, what does this mean? So it's a big if, but if could be a big problem. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight in Seattle, Washington, trial attorney, author of Justice in the Age of Judgment, fellow at the American College Trial Lawyers, Ann Bremner. Also with us tonight in West Palm Beach, Florida, former police lieutenant, great trial attorney, Rick King. And in Columbia, South Carolina, criminal defense attorney, Lori Murray, Lawyer Lori on TikTok. Millions and millions and millions of views. You got to check it out. All right. Lori Murray, let me start with you first, though. I just spoke with Neil Gordon, the co-author. Seems like they vetted all of this to get ready for the book. There was nothing about these conversations. When they went to the Moselle property, when they allegedly had these conversations, there was all silence. What are your thoughts tonight about whether or not these allegations made by the defense could be true? 0 to 10, 10 being it's the truth, 0 being come on.
9.5. I believe them. They're sworn affidavits. I'm sorry, you're talking about you pitting two people against each other. You're asking her whether she did her due diligence, but are they going to say to her, hey, you influenced us? It's not their job. When they're asked about what happened and what the interaction was with Becky, then they told defense attorneys what that interaction was. They don't, Becky's not going to go, did you feel like I was influencing you? Because I kind of was. At this point, it's like Becky with the bad book.
Ann Bremner, I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen a person from the court system, here's the court clerk, allegedly, again, it's allegedly.
Right.
If criminal defendants get the presumption of innocence, clerks of the court clearly get them when they're not even charged with anything, okay? Okay, so.
Right on.
Right, so, but I've never seen an instance like this. I mean, does this stuff happen and I just don't know about it? I'm naive?
No, I mean, this is stunning, but if a juror swears that this happened, I mean, there could be a new trial, like you said. I mean, if they said that happened, the judge is presumed prejudicial if there's extrinsic evidence like this. Something's injected in the jury room, is presumed to be prejudicial, and then the judge has to conduct a hearing to decide whether or not that's harmless. And last I looked at that was harmless beyond a reasonable doubt. I've had 2 cases like this. One of the cases, not like this, it wasn't the clerk, but extrinsic evidence and not jury tampering, but close, where I benefited, got a new trial, and once where I, as a prosecutor, had to do a whole do-over in a serial rapist case. So it happens, especially with social media. But I can't believe a clerk would do that. I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
So, Rick King, I believe an affidavit might be enough to get a hearing, but I want someone in the courtroom facing cross-examination, direct examination, under oath, in view of the public, saying this stuff for me to believe that is. But if it's true, Rick, I think I'm with any lawyer, right? If this is true, there's no way he should not get a new trial, because we can't have people telling, I don't care who they are, it doesn't matter who they are, talking about the case with a jury.
Right, I totally agree with you. And here's the thing, so in Florida, the clerk doesn't have that kind of jury contact. It's the deputy, it's the bailiff in the courtroom who speaks to the jury and takes them out, brings them to lunch, brings them back.
Well, that was the case here too, though. But what Neil Gordon just told me in the interview was there was a bailiff who was in charge of the jury, but I guess the court clerk also had a say in coordinating some of this stuff. I don't know. It's the first trial I'd covered in the Low Country where I went there and saw it in action.
So to me, that in and of itself is somewhat like skeptical, and it gives the kind of just the it looks the impropriety. It just looks improper. But here's what I would say also, and this is where you can color me skeptical. What are the chances of the journalist's wife getting a selfie with her, and then months later there happens to be, it just happened to have her phone number to call her, and this book thing gets started? Color me skeptical, but I just
wait a minute. Let's talk about the book deal here. If this is the big prize, right? This is why we're doing all of this. This is why we are potentially committing crimes and tampering with the jury is to produce this. There was no advance, Lori Murray. There was no advance. It cost the authors $30,000 to get this out to the public. They're in the negative right now, Lori Murray. Unless all your TikTok followers are going to buy a copy, they're not going to make money from this.
You have a copy.
I have told all of them not to buy that. I have told them all, do not buy this book because it is the biggest piece.
What are you doing that for? Let them at least get their money back. They spent $30,000 to make this.
I read that thing and I want my money back. It was the biggest piece of self-aggrandizing collection of papers that I have ever seen. Becky was the center of the case. Becky got to read the verdict. Becky did this. Becky did that. Becky. And, I want to say that in South Carolina, to your point, sir, from Florida, the Clerk of Court is over our bailiffs. Our bailiffs are the ones that are supposed to have the contact with the jury, not the Clerk of Court. So if she had one bit of contact with them, it's improper. The bailiffs have the contact with the jury, not the Clerk of Court.
Okay. And I don't know what the truth is here. I don't know. I need to see testimony. I heard all about affidavits. Ann Bremner, in your career, are affidavits always accurate?
No. In fact, in these juror matters, they're not accurate. In fact, one of my cases, they were totally inaccurate. And it went up on appeal and then all over the place. But you're like, how did you say that? You got him to say that, and they go, I didn't mean that. When they testify, well, I didn't mean to say that. That lawyer asked me to do, X, Y, and Z. So they're just trying to be helpful. No, they're not always accurate.
Okay, so we will see. And like I said, I agree with everyone. I think that if this is true, but we got to get to that part of it. And this weekend, I'm glad I bought it because I needed it tonight. I just bought a big thing of Himalayan pink salt, sea salt, or whatever it is from the Himalayas. So I bought it this weekend. I got it. I needed it, but this could be a real problem. All right, they're with us the whole hour, folks. Our think tank up next.